I have, what a blessed honor, to introduce Tony John Roma. Not to be confused with Tony Romo. And any one of you here that are Cowboys fans will know we don't even want to claim Tony Romo. Tony John Roma, is a blessing of our heart. He received a Bazanella Literary Award for short fiction. His work has appeared in Portuguese American Journal and various Sacramento literary magazines. He's fabulous. Give him a big round of applause.
Thank you so much for inviting us and to invite me to read with these writers whom I so love and admire. And a special thank you to Louise, because Amy kissed us all goodbye when we left Lisbon 2 years ago, and I'm glad she'll be kissing us again tonight. This is a story called Basic Training. After the Second World War, and a generation before the colonial wars, young Portuguese men from the Central Azores Islands were sent to Terceira to serve their military duty. 3 years in a small place away from home, across a short abyssal distance, away from even the smaller places that had nurtured them. When the soldiers passed through Santa Barbara, João Augusto Borba could see São Jorge across the channel and knew that his village, Norte Grande, faced them. He wondered if anyone was, at that moment, in the pastures or in the village, looking back, thinking of him. The island looked like a giant ship cutting through ocean and fog, and at the barracks he daydreamed of that prow of green cliffs and black stone. Manuel Delgado crept up behind him and yanked his earlobe. "Acorda-te, Borba," he said in his worn-out voice. João flinched and pivoted toward him. Delgado was scrawny and pugnacious. His practice of making trouble often landed him in the stockade. "Careful, Delgado," André Silva said, scurrying over to see the action. "These quiet ones can be mean." João usually kept to himself, and Delgado had marked him as weak by nature, especially after his father had paid a visit to the base. Although most didn't know it, João had pled for his father to come and get him out. At first he had complained to his tia Rosa in Angra just a few weeks after arriving. "Oh, rapaz, força," the woman said, squinting through oncoming blindness and tapping his hand to make her point. "You will not write your father. Não tens vergonha. You're a man. You're in the army, and you will fulfill your service." He still felt her fingertip prodding the back of his hand when he wrote the letter to his father anyway. Aware of the censors who would read it before it went through the mail, he explained in his large flowing script that he did not feel well, that perhaps there was some medical problem which had been overlooked. And his father came. When he told João there was no getting out of this, there was a long silence between them. Carlos Augusto Borba, through lessons learned, understood that the best help for his son would not come in rescue. João was not the youngest, but he was the most delicate of four brothers. Physically uncoordinated and often sick, he had been coddled by the adults in his family. Carlos's extra attention had been influenced by his wife's early death, but sheltering the boy had also made things more difficult with his peers. It was bad enough he had one eye so crossed it seemed to be attached to his nose. "Molho, molho, primeiro olho," his brothers used to shout. But his desire to be at home, close to those who provided security, also earned him the labels of baby and pansy. João had learned teasing did not always require a response. He had also learned people like Delgado were relentless until they were taken back a step. While he had always managed to do that with words and humor that hurt, Delgado had reached some part of him that made his face burn and his body shake. Without a thought, João lunged at him. He grabbed him by his skinny neck with both hands and slid him across the room. When Delgado's legs hit a bunk and he tumbled back onto it, João knelt down, ignoring the twisting feeling in his stomach, and grabbed the young man's face, bringing his own so close that his glasses fogged with Delgado's breath. While his brothers had taken to raising animals and milking cows, João never felt comfortable around creatures he could not reason with. After having witnessed him flinch at the snort of a bull, his avó Correia would make excuses to bring the boy to his general store to assist with inventory and bookkeeping. On one such day, returning from a delivery, João heard his father and grandfather arguing inside. He needs to work like the others, Carlos said. This is work, Avocres said. The boy is good with numbers, terrible with livestock. Let him do something of value. It's not fair for his brothers to take on more of the work, his father said. It's not fair that he's weaker than they are, his grandfather replied. The next morning, João offered to help his brother Edwino with the milking. Why, Edwino asked, not waiting for an answer as he flung the milk cans across their donkey's back. The donkey was not as eager as João to work. As Edwino beat the animal with a thick rope, João, his face wet with tears, screamed for him to stop. It's the only way he'll listen, Edwino said through clenched teeth. He hoped Delgado was listening now. You need to stop, he said in a voice that shook too much to sound confident. Didn't I tell you, Andres shouted, hopping from one foot to the other in a crazed dance as other soldiers ran through the door. Look at you, Delgado spat between his thick fingers that covered his mouth. You a little braver now that your eyes are all straight? Thinking the man might try to grab at his eyeglasses, João leapt onto his chest and held him down with his knees. Receiving the glasses had been a turning point for João, and the eye examination was the only good news he had shared with his father. The eye straightens right up, he told Carlos, like everyone else's, and everything is so clear. See, his father said, then laughed at the unintended joke. You can find good things here. Patience. One of the soldiers near the door warned, "O sargento," dissipating João's sudden courage. He stepped off and away from Delgado. My eyes are straight, João said, hardly finding breath for the words. And now I see what a small, stupid man you are. Delgado had been in many fights on the base, but João had never seen him flail the way he came at him now. He ducked away from the explosion of blows, covering his head to protect the delicate wire frames and glass lenses as Delgado screamed and kicked at him. It took 4 men to pull him off. Did you see that? Did you see that? André giggled until the sergeant shut him up. João didn't expect Sergeant Avila to show him any pity, but he wasn't taken away. Perhaps putting Delgado in the stockade was just becoming habit, and the sergeant felt no need to question how the altercation started. João earned some bruises and a few friends that day. When they asked what got into him, he just shook his head and smiled with no joy. They invited him on their trips into town. He usually wouldn't give up the 2.5 escudos they were docked for leaving the base on the weekends, and he worried about running into his aunt, whom he really didn't want to see again. But he decided he would join them. His father had given him 20 escudos, just some kind of consolation, and he started to use the money to buy books while in Angra. While he was now more apt to have conversations with the other soldiers, he spent much of his free time reading. He was lying on his bunk, reading O que pode um aldeão em favor da fé, when Delgado returned to the barracks. João saw him and removed his glasses and placed them on the opposite side of the bed. Delgado said, "Going cross-eyed for me, Borja?" He seemed broken, sapped of energy, one foot dragging more than stepping. His shaved head, yet another part of his punishment, was craned to one side. João sat up on the edge of his bunk, holding his breath. Delgado did not approach him. Instead, he went to his own bunk and sat down, facing the doorway, rubbing his shoulder. They sat for many minutes before Delgado lay back in bed, covering his eyes with his arm. "What are you looking at?" he said. João put on his glasses and picked up his book. He glanced at Delgado with every page he turned. After a while, Delgado said, "You read." It wasn't a question, but João replied anyway, seeing. "The guards, they call me cego," Delgado said. "Do you need glasses too?" João asked. No, Delgado said. "They got that figured out." João sighed. "So why do they call you that?" Delgado groaned behind his lips as he rubbed the back of his neck. "Because I'm stupid." "It's the Alemão, really. He's a bad guy, that one. Mean." The guard they called Alemão, the German, had blonde hair, blue eyes, and rarely spoke around the other soldiers. Delgado said, the first time I'm in the stockade, after sneaking off base and trying to get on that boat, he tells me, what do you think of this? And throws a newspaper through the bars. I say, that's something. Something, the yellow mouse says. You think that's something? I get mad, try to hand the paper back. What does it say? He says. I had heard them talking about Goa, so I say, yeah, those people in Goa, governments. He leans down at me like I'm a dog and says, what does it say? I get angrier, embarrassed, and I say, I can't see the words. My eyes are tired. He laughed. Oh, the German laughed. You can't see the words, he says. Oh, sad. It's good to know he speaks Portuguese, João said, still feeling cautious. They do it every time now. Newspapers, books, getting me angry, Delgado said. He sat up on his bed facing João, just to have an excuse. You don't have to give in, João said, keeping his eyes on the page, reading nothing, recognizing his hypocrisy. Easy for you, Delgado said. You're not a stupid one. João said, lots of people can't read. They get along fine. They're not stupid. Delgado coughed a laugh. I've always been stupid. You said I was. My sister always said so. She used to cuff me upside the head. You've got all those letters twisted around. Stop being stupid and use the brain our Lord gave you. I heard stop being stupid more than I heard the Our Father in our house. João sighed again. There are many kinds of stupid, Delgado. When I said that to you, I didn't know. He was leery of apologizing outright. Will you do something for me? Delgado asked, rising from his bunk. João sat up again, gripping the edge of his mattress. Delgado shook his head and waved a hand at him as he opened his locker. I'll even give you a cigarette, he said, removing one from the pack and placing it behind his ear. He walked toward João with an envelope in his hand. From my mother or my sister, I think, he said, handing him the letter. João nodded, keeping his eyes on the envelope. Just as he was tempted to apologize, he was tempted to tell Delgado that he would never receive a letter from his own mother, that she had died of tuberculosis when he was 5. But whether he had earned some respect from the man through his show of violence or his ability to read, he would not give up that edge with any display of weakness. Maria Jacinta, João read from the envelope before tearing the end off. My mother, Delgado said. Flamengo, 28th of August of 1947. Caro filho, João read. I hope this letter finds you in good health and with greater wisdom each day. Ha, Delgado said. See, even she knows I'm stupid, but a mother can't say so. João shook his head and continued. This old woman is getting more tired with each day. I had another tooth pulled last month, but my health is holding, thanks be to God. My gums healed in time for the festa, and I ate a bit more than an old lady should. As he continued reading, João cleared his throat many times as the vague memory of his mother drifted between his eyes and the letter in his hands. The insistent vision from when he was 3 or 4, standing in the doorway of her quarantine room, the closest the boys were allowed to get, was the image of a woman in bed, always in bed, smiling through weak lips, pointing or waving a hand as she spoke. He remembered his younger brother José tugging on his arm and someone handing them each half of an espèce. He remembered biting into the sweet spice cookie, the flavor of it, the joy of it, filling his mouth, giving some context to the words he could not hear as the woman spoke and nodded against her pillow. Because in every one of his memories, her mouth moved, and her lips moved, and her mouth moved. But as he read the words of Delgado's mother, he could not recall the words of his own. He wouldn't share that with Delgado. He couldn't. Thank you.